Hey everyone, it's Megan here from Meghan Makes Do, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet the Magnus hat. So for this tutorial, we will be using Lion Brand's Wool Ease and Scarfy Light. So you'll need two different colors of a worsted weight yarn. You will also need a size H 5mm crochet hook along with a J 6mm crochet hook. And you'll also need a pair of scissors and a tapestry needle. And optionally, you might also want a faux fur pom, or you can make your own using the leftover yarn from your hat. So let's go ahead and get started. So to start our hat, we'll be starting with the bottom ribbing of the brim. And we're going to be using our 5mm crochet hook and our Wool Ease yarn. And we just want to put a slip knot on our hook. And then we want to chain 9. Okay, and then working into the back bumps of our chain, we're going to skip that first bump and work a single crochet into the second bump from the hook and in each back bump all the way across. Okay, so we're working into that last bump. Oops, I think I missed a strand there. There we go. Okay, so now for row 2 through 72, we want to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to be working into the back loop only and working a single crochet back loop only in each stitch all the way across. So we'll have 8 stitches in each row of our brim or our band for our hat. And we're using a single crochet back loop only ribbing. So just keep repeating row 2 until you have a total of 72 rows. Okay, so now that we have our 72 rows here, what we want to do is fold our band in half, and we're going to slip stitch the 2 short ends together. So we want to chain 1, and then we're just going to go through both stitches on the working row and the beginning row and just slip stitch those together. And this is going to make just one big loop for the band of our hat. And you can easily adjust the size of your hat by eliminating or adding rows to your band. You just want to make sure that you have a multiple of 3. So here's the last stitch. Okay, so now our band is seamed together, and we're going to turn it so that the right side is facing out, and we're going to be switching our yarn color and switching our hook. So you can just drop the Wool Ease yarn at this point and take out your 5mm hook, and we're going to grab our 6mm hook, and we're also going to grab our Scarfy Light yarn. And then to switch colors, I'm just going to grab the Scarfy Light and pull it through, and then I'm going to take my working end of my Wool Ease, pull it down until it kind of goes into the stitches of the band. So it'll be pretty invisible there. Okay, so now we're going to chain 2. The chain 2 does not count as a stitch. And we want to work a double crochet into the end of each row of our band. So here's our first row here. So we're going to go in and work a double crochet stitch in each row end. And since we had 72 rows of our band, we should have 72 double crochet at the end of this round. And we're going to be working in turned rounds, changing color at the end of every round. That's why we didn't fasten off our wool ease yarn, because we're going to pick that back up for the next round. So just go ahead and continue working double crochet, one double crochet into the edge of each row. Okay, so we're almost all the way around. And here's our last stitch. And then we're just going to slip stitch to that first double crochet to join. Okay, so now we want to drop the scarfy light and we're going to pick back up our wool ease. Just make sure that you're getting those tails out of the way. And we're just going to switch back over to wool ease. Again, pull the scarfy light tight till it kind of disappears down into the top of the stitch. And then we're going to turn. And here, the first row of wool ease, again, can be a little tricky. So here's our chain stitch from the beginning. We want to go in between that chain stitch and our last stitch that we made of the scarfy light. So in between those stitches, we're going to work a single crochet, then we're going to chain 2, skip 3 double crochet, and work a single crochet between the third skip stitch and the next stitch. So we're working in between stitches this time for this round. Chain 2 again, skip 3, single crochet between the stitches, chain 2, skip 3, single crochet between. And we're going to do this all the way around our hat until we get back to where we started. So we'll be working in turned rounds, joined turned rounds for the main body of our hat. Okay, so here's our last chain 2, and then we want to slip stitch to our first single crochet to join. And then we want to bring the woolies to the back of our work, to the wrong side, and switch back to our scarfy light. Chain 2, and then pull that woolies tight till it disappears into our row. And then we're going to turn our work. And this time we're going to be working just into these chain 2 spaces all the way around. So we're going to work 3 double crochet into each chain 2 space all the way around. And again, that chain 2 at the beginning here does not count as a stitch. So we're skipping over those single crochets and just working 3 double crochet into each chain 2 space. So this is our last set of 3 double crochet. And then we're going to slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet to join. And then we're going to change back to wool ease, turn, and work a row 2 repeat. And we're just going to repeat rows 2 and 3 until our hat reaches the desired height. I usually like to make mine about 8 to 9 inches tall, but you can of course adjust to suit your head size. So go ahead and keep repeating rows 2 and 3, and I'll meet you back here when we're done to show you how to close up your hat. Okay, I'm on my last set of 3 double crochet on my last row here. And then again, we'll slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet to join. And here you can adjust the height of your hat here. So we have, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 rows total. And our hat is measuring about 9.5 inches here. So I think that's a good spot to stop, but if you have a smaller head or you don't want as much of a slouch, you can definitely stop a row or two earlier, or if you want a really slouchy hat, you of course can add more rows here. But I think we're at a good spot, and what I'm going to do is we can cut off our Woolies yarn, leaving a tail for weaving in, and then we want to cut off an extra long tail of the Scarfy Light because we will be using that to sew the top of our hat together. So I'm just going to fasten that off. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and weave in the Woolies end, and I can show you kind of how I like to do that since it's in the middle of a row here. But you can see our seam here, how we've carried up those strands of the different colors up the seam. And here I like to go into the chain stitches here, so behind those double crochet stitches, to weave in my end. And I like to go back and forth, usually like at least 2 or 3 times, going into the different strands of yarn, making sure I'm kind of catching it so that it's not going to come out later on. So that way our tail is hidden and you're not going to see any of that on the right side of the hat. And of course, we'll have some tails down here that we'll need to weave in as well. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to close up the top of your hat. So with our tapestry needle, we want to thread our Scarfy Light, our yarn, long tail, onto the needle. And then we want to fold our hat in half as evenly as possible. So making sure that our seam is in the center of our hat here. Okay. And then we want to make a stitch going through both sides of the top of the hat. Kind of wrap it around like a whip stitch just to secure it in place. And that has given us 2 loops at the top of our hat. So then we want to open the hat the opposite way and then bring like the center of those 2 loops to that center stitch that we just made. So try to get this as even as possible. But we're basically taking those 2 loops and folding them in half, and then taking our yarn and going through the center of those 2 loops, that center stitch that we already made, and the other center of the loops. And then sewing that together. And that gives us, now we have 4 loops in the middle of our hat. And now what we want to do is we want to take the center of each of those 4 loops and bring that in to the center of the hat as well. So we can again do this 2 at a time. So the centers into the middle here, just like that. And again, go through that center stitch and through the centers of those 2 loops. And I always like to go twice around, like whip stitch it, so it's nice and secure. And then we can turn, and again, those center loops, bring those in, go through, Okay, so now we have these 8 loops in our hat, and we want to just kind of go around the top of our hat, bringing the center of each one of those 8 loops into the center of our hat. So I like to put my left hand inside the hat while I do this, because we want to go all the way down through the hat. So here's my yarn that I'm using to sew. I want to go into the inside of that center of the loop, draw my yarn through like that, and then I'm going to bring it down into that center of the hat and draw it through. Okay, then when I come back up, I'm going to come back up through the center of the next loop. Oop, drop my needle. There we go. So coming back up through the next loop center, and then again going back down through the middle of the hat. So that's 2, and then again come up through that center. It helps to kind of stick a finger in that loop so you can see it. There we go. Okay, that's the 3rd one. And then our next loop right there. Get our yarn through there. There we go. There's number 4. So we're halfway through. Get it into the center of the next loop and down through the center of the hat. So we're just drawing the centers of each loop, each of those 8 loops, into the center of the hat, and that will help us kind of get that all nice and closed. And this is just my preferred way of closing up a hat. If you have a different way of doing it that you prefer, that's totally fine. I believe we have 2 loops left. This one's kind of poking out to the side here. There we go. So it might be a little tricky to see, but I'm just going back and forth from the inside to the outside of the hat, coming up in the center of those loops. So I have one more loop right here that I need to get. Okay. And then we want to bring our yarn back down through the center of the hat, making sure all those loops have been closed up. We have all 8 loops closed up. This is what the top of our hat will look like. And then on the inside, I'm going to tie some knots here so that I know my hat won't come undone. Oop, got a funky loop there, but anyway, you'll want to tie a couple knots and then weave in the ends of your hat here on the inside. Oh, the Scarfy Light yarn is not being my friend right now. But as long as it feels nice and secure and you're happy with it, that's fine. Okay, so then you can either leave your tail on here and that can help you sew on a pom-pom. What I like to do is I usually put some snaps on here. So I'll put one end of the snap and sew it onto this top part where all my loops have come together. And then on the pom-pom, I'll sew the other end of the snap so I can snap it on and off. You can make a pom-pom with any of the extra yarn that you have from your hat. But that is how you make a Magnus beanie. Okay, so I just wanted to show you a couple different pom-pom options. This is a faux fur one that had some ends. I just wove them into the hat and then tied a knot to secure it. But another option is to get one of these pom-pom makers. This one is from Clover. You open it up and you wrap a bunch of yarn around, and then you do that on the other side as well. And once you have it full of yarn, you close it up, cut your yarn, tie a knot, and then you'll have a nice full pom-pom. So if you want to, I will put a link in the description below if you want to pick up one of these pom-pom makers and make your own pom-pom. And I will show you what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and make one using the Scarfy Light and show you a couple options. Okay, so I've used this pom-pom maker and the leftover Scarfy Light from my hat, and you can see I have a nice full pom-pom. Oh, I've got one little strand there that I need to cut off still, because you will need to trim up your pom-pom, but I've left some tails here, and what I can do is just thread those tails through and tie it in. Another option would be to actually go through and sew all the way through the pom-pom to attach it to your hat. You could also do it using the leftover woolies yarn if you want a more contrasted look, but I kind of like the look of this Scarfy Light pom. If you're wanting to also make the Magnus scarf, you can find that video tutorial as well. We'll put a link in the description below for you, along with all of the materials that you'll need to make this set. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.